Hello, this is the Unit 1 extension of the Biological Basis of Behavior, and this is the first of 3 sections. These are flip notes 1.8 on sleep. My Bitmoji is sleeping in a sushi roll. I don't know why, but it's adorable and maybe my favorite Bitmoji. Let's talk about sleep, one of our favorite things to do.
All right, but before we get to sleep, let's talk about consciousness, which sleep is not. The nature of consciousness includes 4 components. So when you are conscious, you're aware of external events, but you're also aware of internal sensations going on in your body. You're aware that you are you, that you're a unique being, that you are experiencing these events. And then you're aware of your thoughts about the experience. So sometimes, if any one of those aren't really happening, you may not be totally conscious. One of the first people to really kind of focus on the study of consciousness was William James, who that name should sound familiar because we know him for the father of American psychology. And early on, he coined the term stream of consciousness, the idea that our thoughts are continuously flowing like a calm river or calm stream or a raging river. We have different levels of awareness. There is focused awareness. That is when we are in the zone, but maybe hopefully that's right now when you're wide awake, you're fully alert. Athletes will often talk about how they are able to tune out all the distractions when they're in this level of focused awareness. Notice how he's sticking his tongue out. That's often also a sign that we're in strong, focused zone. Evolutionary perspective says that people stick their tongue out to kind of scare off predators. The animals do that too, and with our tongue out, it's basically making a scary face. Don't bother me while I'm focused. Drifting awareness is another level of awareness, and we're in that drifting level. That's often where we're daydreaming. Often we have that stare. Divided consciousness is something we also have the ability to do, but it can be pretty dangerous. We can perform multiple tasks at once, but if you're doing, for example, texting while driving, that can be super dangerous. Highway amnesia is where you're driving along. You could have been just kind of lost in your thoughts, and you get to your destination and you realize, oh my gosh, I don't remember anywhere that I just drove. Did I stop at the last stoplight? And it's kind of scary to think about how you weren't really focused, but you were able to do that. And then we come to unconsciousness. Both sleep and dreaming are considered stages or examples of unconsciousness. By definition, you lack awareness of your surroundings, or you have some type of loss of consciousness. And other ways that we can lose consciousness are through head trauma, surgical anesthesia, or being in a coma. Um, in addition to being conscious or being unconscious, there are altered states of consciousness, and that includes daydreaming because you're not fully aware of what's going on. Meditation, where you can kind of put yourself into an altered state through hypnosis and through drug use. All of those can create altered states of consciousness. But for the rest of this section, we're just going to focus on sleep. So our sleep is regulated by our circadian rhythms. Circadian rhythms are 24-hour cycles that our body are on. Sleep and wakefulness are one of them, but other things on there include just when your body is more alert, when hormones are released, your bowels and your hunger are all kind of on part of the circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythms are controlled by the hypothalamus, and specifically, it's the suprachiasmatic nucleus that's located within the hypothalamus. That part of the hypothalamus is triggered by light. So the optic nerve sends light signals to the brain, and that signals to the hypothalamus and the pineal gland to release melatonin. Melatonin is what tells us to get sleepy. So when we are, or sorry, it doesn't release then. It stops releasing it when we have light. So melatonin makes us sleepy. When we're exposed to light, we stop producing melatonin. When we're exposed to dark, we produce more melatonin, and that makes us more sleepy. Here's a sample of a circadian rhythm and just some of the things that might happen throughout the day. So if we start over here around 6 a.m., as we start to wake up, we have a rise in blood pressure. As light starts to show up with the light and dark cycle here, melatonin secretion stops. So when melatonin stops, we stop being sleepy. We start to wake up. This person happens to have on their circadian rhythm a daily bowel movement right around 8:30 a.m. So everybody's is different, but you'll notice for yourself that you often have to go to the bathroom about the same time of day. Hopefully, it's at a time you've been able to get it adjusted to a time when you're able to go to the bathroom and not when the first period starts. Other things that happen in the morning, higher testosterone release, and then we're really at our sharpest peak for alertness after 10 a.m. So it's kind of rough starting out these early school days. Throughout the day, our coordination improves, reaction time, cardiovascular and muscular strength improve. All of those are best in the afternoon. Later in the afternoon, early evening, higher blood pressure, higher body temperature. And then as it starts to get dark, melatonin secretion starts again, and we start to get sleepy as it gets dark. Our bowel movements are suppressed, so hopefully you're not having to have a bowel movement in the middle of the night. And then we reach our deepest sleep about 2 a.m. As it gets closer to morning, our body temperature drops. So if you often find yourself waking up really cold in the morning, it could be that it is actually colder outside, but it's also that your body temperature has dropped. So everybody's is a little bit different, but there's just some examples of things that are occurring along with your circadian rhythm. This showing kind of the sleep cycle and what things are happening over a 2-day period. Our alertness goes up throughout the day and then drops while we're sleeping. Our body temperature increases throughout the day, peaking in the late afternoon, early evening, body temperature dropping while we're sleeping. And then this one's pretty interesting too. So when our brain signals to our hypothalamus signals to our pituitary gland in the middle of the night to release growth hormones. So this is especially important in children and younger children, of why sleep is so important. And that's because that's when growth hormones are released. You sleep and then you grow. But what happens when you don't get enough sunlight? How does that affect you? It can affect circadian rhythms, but studies show that even if there are no external light cues, your body would still be able to adapt and have circadian rhythms. But in areas where there's not a lot of exposure to sunlight, people become more prone to seasonal affective disorder, or SAD. And it's a type of depression that often happens with fall and winter when days are shorter and there's just less sunlight. So it's a specific type of depression that happens with the changing of the seasons. And the treatment, a lot of it is very similar to just treatment of depression in general, but probably the specific treatment is light therapy. That people who have this are encouraged to get as much exposure to sunlight as possible, and then also the use of artificial lamps or light to kind of help boost their mood and get their circadian rhythms on track, hopefully to minimize insomnia as well. So to study the different sleep stages and also the different states of consciousness, the main tool for that is an EEG, the electroencephalography, which is looking at our brain waves and the EEG patterns associated with each state of consciousness. So for the stages of sleep, in earlier sleep, our brain waves are shorter, they're theta waves. And as we progress through the different sleep stages, through 1 through 4, the sleep waves get bigger. In stage 2, we have what are called sleep spindles, and these are just sudden bursts of neural activity. Sometimes you could feel this maybe as when you're falling asleep, you're just slightly asleep and you kind of like flinch. Maybe you're having a dream and then you feel some movement. You might have had a burst of neural activity causing you to do that flinch with a sleep spindle. Stages 3 and 4 are considered slow wave sleep, and they have delta brain waves. And so these are big, slow brain waves when we're deep asleep. So here we have kind of a recap of all those brain waves. But notice down here we have another stage of sleep called REM sleep, or rapid eye movement. And notice that the brain waves here in REM sleep are pretty much identical to when we are awake. We'll come back to that. So stages 1 through 3, often called quiet sleep, or I usually see in textbooks more non-REM sleep, or NREM. In stage 1, this is just when you're first falling asleep, you're just drifting to sleep. Sometimes you're in stage 1 in class, hopefully not my class. Sometimes you just have sort of images, sometimes auditory hallucinations. You've got some alpha and theta waves, just barely drifting. Stage 2 is when you're actually falling asleep. You're a little more relaxed. You've got sleep spindles, short bursts of brain activity. And then usually stage 3 and 4, hopefully you're not having that at school, but that's when we're in our deepest sleep or really hard to awaken. So you often don't hear noises while you're in stage sleep. But we don't actually have stage 3 all through the night, just in the first few sleep cycles. So looking at how we go through the stages. So here we're awake. We go to stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and stage 4. After stage 4, we actually cycle back through the stages 3, 2, 1, and then we reach for the first time REM sleep. Lots of stuff going on in REM sleep. Notice it's very close to when we are awake, but brain is very active during REM sleep. The most dreams seem to occur in REM sleep, memory consolidation, growth hormone release, lots of stuff happening in REM sleep. REM sleep is the good stuff. We want lots of REM sleep. After REM, we go back to 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1 REM, 2, 3, and notice we drop those later stages of sleep and spend more time in REM sleep. Generally, we wake up. If you're able to complete a sleep cycle, you wake up in REM sleep or just right after. So the end of REM sleep right here is the end of a sleep cycle. So this person went through 1, 2, 3, 4 sleep cycles that night. If they stopped right there, 4.5, it looks like, is when they woke up. So REM sleep is often called paradoxical sleep. A paradox is something that's kind of the opposite of what you think it should be. So you are asleep, but your brain is very much awake. So the paradox part is that you're asleep, but your brain is awake. So after reaching stage 3, we go back through the stages towards stage 1. But all that big stuff happens in REM sleep. Dreaming, we do know that dreaming actually occurs in all the stages, and we'll get to that in the next section. But it occurs the most in REM sleep. Growth hormones are released and that memory consolidation. Other pros of getting lots of REM sleep: it boosts your mood, helps recover from stress, helps improve cognitive functions, helps fight depression, improve your immune system, basically your overall well-being and vitality. But it's called REM sleep, or rapid eye movement, because your eyes literally are moving rapidly back and forth. You usually don't see it because your eyelids are closed. If you've ever seen somebody whose eyelids don't shut all the way while they're asleep, their eyes are definitely moving back and forth quickly if they're in REM sleep. The other thing that should be happening is that while your brain is very awake, your body is most definitely paralyzed, unless you have a sleep disorder. So here we are again comparing those brain waves of REM sleep to when we're awake, identical beta waves. Here's showing one sleep cycle, and we go through multiple. In 8 hours of sleep, you might have about 4 to 5, and they're about 90 minutes in length. So we start being awake, and then we kind of drift back and forth between awake and stage 1, kind of tossing and turning. 1, 2, 3. Now, stage 4 has actually just been combined with stage 3 in recent research. So 3 and 4 are the same. They're just slow, deep sleep. So kind of going back and forth here between 3 and 2, and then eventually you stay in deep sleep for a while, and then you cycle back to REM sleep. And you may wake up. Often we wake up right after REM sleep because we're so close to being awake. So if you normally wake up about the same time in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, that's because you've just finished a sleep cycle. Your body is more aware to sensory signals in the environment. So we tend to wake up about the same time. Or maybe you always hear dogs barking at the same time. Those dogs may have been barking all night long, but you only could hear it after you finished REM sleep because you were closer to being awake. So there are no longer 4 stages of NREM. 3 and 4 have been combined. So the deeper stage, now stage 3, shortens throughout the night. So down here, we don't have any more stage 3s and 4s. They eventually completely go away, which allows us to spend more time in REM. We often wake up in REM, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the next section. But here are these spots. Those are the brief awakening. Notice again, we often wake when we're in REM. Sometimes we can go back into REM, but not always. We can try, like when you, I'll talk about in the next section. So here's that cycle: 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, and spending more time there in REM. What's going on in the brain while you are asleep? A lot. We know that the brain is wide awake while the rest of you is not. The reticular activating system plays a role. We know pons plays a major role. The hypothalamus, especially with the release of melatonin, but also the pituitary gland sending out hormones. The medulla is controlling your breathing and your heart rate, which becomes steady and slowed while you're asleep. But lots of research always going on about sleep because it's something we all do, something we all want to do better. One thing that has been discovered recently is neurogenesis seems to happen while we're in REM sleep. So remember, it used to be thought that you were born with all your neurons and that was it. That was all you got. But new research shows that when we're in REM sleep, that new neurons are being born. So that's another reason why REM sleep is so important. So literally getting smarter and growing new neurons while you're asleep in REM sleep. How much do we need? It varies by age. Newborns and young children need a lot more sleep. And again, we know those growth hormones are being released um, during sleep. So when you're growing the most, you need the most sleep. Teenagers still need 8 to 10 hours of sleep a night. But because there's not as much, not melatonin, growth hormones being released as we're adults and older adults, adults don't need as much sleep. This showing in kind of graph form here, how much of the sleep we get over time is in REM or non-REM sleep. It's a little bit hard to see at the bottom. This is in months and then years. But infants and young children spending half their time in REM sleep. And then really all the way up until you're about 18, you're still spending 22% in REM sleep. And then as we get older, a little bit less in REM. The effects of not getting enough sleep, some effects of sleep deprivation. I think we're all familiar with at least some of these. Irritability, memory lapses, impaired judgment, lots of yawning, cognitive impairment. Hallucinations are usually with severe sleep deprivation, but symptoms similar to ADHD can happen when you are sleep deprived. Your immune system starts to break down, your reaction times slow, you don't react as quickly. Um, Growth suppression, because that's when growing happens while we're asleep, and then more at risk of obesity and diabetes. Sleep deprivation, we know now, plays a major role in car accidents. And in some cases, being sleep deprived is just as, or even maybe more dangerous in some cases than being under the influence of drugs and alcohol. So, drowsy driving can be just as dangerous as drunk driving. And a lot of us don't consider how dangerous or risky it is. So, stay off the road when you're sleepy, go take a nap. Your body's way to help kind of catch up on sleep, which it can't ever really do, is REM rebound. When you have not spent enough time in REM, when you do go back to sleep, your body spends less time in the other stages of 1 through 3 or 4, which we don't really count anymore, and then it'll spend more time in REM. So we fall into that dream-like sleep a lot faster with REM rebound. REM rebound, good. We want lots of REM sleep.